So, in my last video, I spent some time analyzing the current state of the Nintendo Switch 2, now that we are just over 2 months in, analyzing some of the goods and some of the bads, and dissecting the wider opinions about that stuff, as well as my own personal opinions about that stuff. And, of course, as you could imagine, the topic of game key cards came up. And I spent a few minutes kind of sharing and really more reiterating a lot of what I've said in the past on some prior videos, on how I'm not really someone looking forward to this all-digital future, and whenever any console goes all-digital, like a PlayStation 6 or a next Xbox, or even potentially a Switch 3, whatever that looks like, once any one console goes all-digital and removes the ability to buy and play physical games forever, I will pretty much move on from that console, and maybe even from the gaming hobby entirely. Now, there's a lot of nuance to what I mean when I say that, and again, I've discussed it on prior videos. I'm not going to spend this video diving any deeper into that, other than to say, a statement like that obviously garnered some interesting responses from folks, and I wanted to read one comment someone left, mostly because it's a pretty kind comment, but also calls into question that philosophy that I would have, like, why would you care about physical gaming as opposed to just gaming itself, blah, blah, blah. I want to read this one comment that this person left because it's interesting. I understand why they asked the question, and it sets up what I want to talk about in this entire video. It's actually the inspiration for me having this conversation. So let's read this comment real quick, and then I'll just kind of blab on about how I feel. So this person, Davis Itho 1520, not sure how it's meant to be pronounced. This is what Davis had said. They say, I respect you for keeping it real with your physical love, but if you stop playing just because consoles will go all digital, and it seems like it, then perhaps you love more the boxes and the merch rather than the game itself. Times are changing with the evolution of technology, people are adapting to it, and the world won't end for it. So, it's a great comment, it's very well worded, and like I said at the very beginning, they're even like pretty cool about it. They're like, hey, I respect that you're being honest and that you feel this way about physical gaming versus digital gaming, but what about this? And then kind of presents a counterpoint. So like, I had a couple of other people leave slightly more shitty comments in response to this, but this was a normal person's response and question and statement about an opinion that I shared in that video. Granted, most people in the comments weren't even talking about this at all, but there was probably 3 or 4 comments that did reference the fact that I said I would give up on an all-digital console, and Davis here left this thoughtful comment and made an interesting point and a perspective that, even though it's not as black and white as they lay out, I understand why someone would say this and why they would take this away from my opinion when they say, if you would give up on an all-digital console or an all-digital future, then it seems like you care more about the boxes of games and the merchandise and something you can hold and collect more than the actual game itself and the experience of playing the video game. Now, that's not actually true, and it's not how I and most other physical players feel, but like I said, I can at least understand why someone would have that takeaway, and this gives me an opportunity to now talk about it more. So, what does it mean to be a physical gamer? What does it mean to me? What do I think it means for a lot of other folks? I obviously can't speak for everyone who has preferences on digital or physical, but I'll speak to what I feel, okay, and why I think that physical gaming and physical media matters. Keep in mind, not only do I buy my video games physically 95% of the time, yes, I give in on the occasional indie game and I'll buy it digitally, but not only do I collect my video games physically or own them physically, same with my movies. I have a huge DVD and Blu-ray collection, and I'm always adding to it. Every single new movie that comes out every year, I'm buying the Blu-rays and the 4Ks, and I even talk about and share that stuff on social media all the time. If you follow me, you see me snapping pictures of the newest game I got or the newest movie that I purchased. It is very important to me. I'm actually kind of entering a phase in my life where movies and watching and discussing and dissecting movies is actually a lot more interesting to me than anything happening in gaming, and that might determine what I do with my YouTube presence in the future. But anyway, don't want to get sidetracked. The point is, I believe this wholeheartedly. For video games and for movies, physical matters. And so there's a couple of reasons that I want to discuss on why it's important to me The first certainly gets muddy in the current age, but I still want to mention ownership, true ownership, because when you have something physical and present and you paid for it and you can hold it and this is the game, like Donkey Kong here, right? Well, I don't have the cartridge in here. It's in my case with all my other actual cartridges. But when you have a game, you can say, I own Donkey Kong. There's nothing Nintendo could do on the back end that stops me from having the cartridge in the case for this game, putting it into my Switch 2, and playing that game. They can't turn off whatever sort of back end thing that allowed me to access that game. Now, that's not true for a lot of games nowadays, unfortunately. So to be fair, this ownership piece is still present for certain games and for certain companies who make games. But admittedly, the digital age, which again, I'm against, is removing even the ownership portion of having a physical game. Because a lot of games require servers to either download, like with game key cards, or just to simply be able to access. I think Diablo 4, which I do own physically, is a game coming to mind that when I tried to play that game when our internet was being worked on like a year ago, and there was a day and a half where our internet wasn't just working, I couldn't even work from home because of this, and I tried playing Diablo 4, I'm pretty sure I remember that I couldn't even play that game offline. Like, without being able to connect to the internet, right? So there's an element of the digital age and the DRM age, the license, the end user license agreement that these companies are giving you, that even with some physical games, you might not be able to play it without being able to be connected to the internet and have that digital element. So the true ownership in, 50 years, when all of the servers for Switch 2 and PS5 and Series X and yada yada are like gone and they're not supporting them anymore, maybe you won't be able to play some of the physical games, or that I won't be able to play some of the physical games that I own for all of these consoles because the digital element is removed. Some I will still be able to play in 50 years, others I won't. So the ownership thing is still a part of why I choose to buy these games, but admittedly, the digital age is ruining even some of that aspect. The other element to talk about is, I think, the preservation of games and even the collecting component. I think they both kind of tie into each other. It's important to be able to preserve games. Like these 3 examples I have here, right? I chose Doom the Dark Ages because it's the PlayStation 5 version of a game key card for the Switch 2 because it does say internet required. So this is one that blends the line of physical and digital, and it is a problem in that respect, but I also love the fact that I have a physical disc. And I've downloaded it once to my PS5, so in theory I'll never need the internet again to play it. So there is that element. But again, I have these games, I own them, I can always put in my Switch 2 cartridge of Donkey Kong or my PS5 disc for Death Stranding 2, and even without the day 1 updates, I can play these games. So, in theory, to go back to the 50 years thing, in 50 years, at least these 2 games, I could put the discs into any brand new Switch 2 or PS5 I might have, or a used one I might buy from a store, I would say, and I would be able to play them, and they're not digital. These games will always exist. They are preserved in a physical form. I think the disc is in here. Yeah, I haven't played Death Stranding 2 in a while. So, look, it's a disc. I mean, hell, I even have the disc for Doom in here. So I'm just opening up all my stuff, right? So, there's a level of preservation and collecting, because I have these on a shelf with all the other PS5 and Switch 2 games and everything. There's a level of preservation that happens when you own a game physically. You have the disc, you have the cartridge, you have the case. It can be displayed to show, look at, this is my collection for PlayStation 5 or for Nintendo Switch or Switch 2. And it's important to know that in 50 years, something will still exist from these games. They cannot be wiped off of the earth because I have them. I have the cartridges, the discs, the cases. That has value. And I think that probably the second most important component to this for me, and the one that I really wanted to talk about the deepest, obviously the ownership is the most important, but as I already mentioned, the digital era is already removing a lot of the value of ownership of a physical game, because how much do you even still really own the game that's on the disc or cartridge? Every day we own less and less of what's on our discs and cartridges, and that is a problem, and it's why the digital age is bad. But I want to talk about the concept of actually having something I paid for. That matters to me so much, and I think it matters to a lot of people who collect physical games as well. I've joked about this in the past, but if you're just buying everything digitally, or if you're just renting it via something like Game Pass or whatever else is out there, you don't even really have something that you paid for. Like, to buy a brand new game at $60 or $70 and all you've gotten is a thumbnail that shows up in your thumbnail collection of games on like a hard drive on a console or a PC, you don't really have what you paid for. And I can't speak for everybody, I can't speak for you guys, but I have a job and a career. I work really hard for the money that I make. Gaming to me is a luxury and a hobby and something on the side that I get to put some of my money into for fun so that I have something to do in my free time, okay? I don't live and breathe video games or this YouTube channel. And so I paid $70 for Donkey Kong. Look it. I have it. This is where my $70 went into. Again, it's a bad example again because my cartridge isn't in here, but pretend my Donkey Kong cartridge is here. This is what my money went into. This is what I'm working 45 to 50 hours a week for. I have something to show for the money I worked for, earned, and spent on Donkey Kong, or on Death Stranding 2, or the myriad other games that I have for a variety of platforms, both modern platforms and retro and old platforms. Whether I'm talking about my Nintendo 64 games, my Sega Genesis games, my GameCube games, whatever, look at all of this stuff, all these clips of some of these things that I just own. It's not just for the sake of, as this person said in their question to me or in their comment, it's not that I care more about, ooh, I just have stuff. I just like packing my drawers and my shelves and my closets with stuff. And it's not that I care about having the merchandise, as this person phrased it, more than I do being able to play these Nintendo 64 games, or these GameCube games, or these Wii U games, and whatever else you're seeing in some of these clips that I filmed. It's that I have something to show for it. When I look at all of these Genesis games, and these GameCube games, or these Wii and Wii U and PlayStation 4 games, it's like, this is what all my money went into over decades. This is decades worth of the work and the blood and sweat, as corny as that sounds, that I put into being employed and having a job and contributing to society and earning my own income and then spending it on something fun for myself. This is physical proof and evidence of what I went through to earn money and then spend that money. And that doesn't have to matter to everybody. I'm not telling you that you need to share this philosophy. This is just my philosophy. And I think it's the philosophy a lot of other people have as well. It's nice to have something to show what you work for, right? This is the end result of decades worth of work. And I can say decades because, again, I'm showing you Sega Genesis games. I'm showing you GameCube games. We're talking about the 90s. We're talking about the early 2000s, when I was a teenager and when I was in my 20s. And I mean, honestly, the GameCube stuff was stuff that I bought when I was working for GameStop in 2002 to 2005, right? So this is also memories. Like, you don't get the same feeling when you just open up the files on a hard drive and you just see a list of game titles and you just press execute on a thumbnail. It's just, I'm not saying you can't like that or prefer that, because you can. The options are valid for both people who like both kinds, but there's something to having games. Look I still own these Genesis games. Hell, you guys know me. I still have a collection of Atari Jaguar and Atari Jaguar CD cartridges and discs. I mean, all of this, it just means something to me. So I hope that a lot of this helps explain what it means to be a physical gamer, at least for me, and I know I've said it several times, I'll say it again. I also think I'm speaking for how a lot of people who like physical gaming and physical game collecting also feel. It's going to be different for everybody, but I think I'm covering a good amount of folks and the philosophies they have when I say that these are my philosophies. I care about the ownership. I care about the preservation of games. And yes, it's nice to collect and it's nice to have stuff to display for sure, but I also care about having something to show for the money that I worked for and then spent on myself and treated myself, or something that might have been given as a gift. It feels a lot more to be gifted a game that you can hold and then put in your console, as opposed to, like, I don't know, freaking PlayStation bucks or whatever the V-Bucks things are for things like Fortnite and Call of Duty or whatever. I don't know how you gift digital crap to people, because I'm not a weirdo who spends money on that stuff. So I'm not going to spend $70 on something I can't hold and I can't show and I can't lend. I mean, I've lent games to people. I gave my buddy Super Mario Wonder recently, and I also gave another buddy of mine the Uncharted games. I have the collection on PlayStation 5, and I gave that to him to play. And it's like all of this stuff has value. So, to bring this full circle and come back to the statement, the comment that this person left, which again was a fine comment. And this isn't even meant to be like direct response to this person. Of course, I'm not calling them out. I liked their comment. They were super kind and cool about it, but they presented an understandable perspective that's different than mine. And so it gave me a reason to talk about this. And so again, verbatim, what they say is, perhaps you love more the boxes and the merch rather than the game itself. And I don't know how well that came through in this video, but I promise you that's not true, even though I understand why you say that and why somebody might say that. The game still matters. Whether you've downloaded, what's a game I can use for an example? I'll say the Wind Waker, right? So whether you're playing the digital version of Zelda the Wind Waker on the GameCube Virtual Console thing for NSO, or like me, whether you have the physical copy and you play it either on your GameCube or your Wii U, it is more important to be able to play the Wind Waker than it is to necessarily be able to hold a copy of the Wind Waker. Sure, like, I get that. And I use that as an example, by the way, because it's my favorite Zelda game of all time, and like in my top 3 favorite video games ever made. So that's a good example for me, where it's like a game I love that much. I would rather you play it, even if you just purchased it digitally on the Wii U, or if you're just playing it on NSO online. It's more important to know you're playing this amazing game called The Wind Waker than that you actually own a physical copy of it. Sure, I think that does take precedence. But I think it can also be just as important for someone like me to say that I have a copy of The Wind Waker on the GameCube, and I have a copy of Wind Waker HD on the Wii U. I own those games forever. Nintendo can never, ever, ever stop me from putting my GameCube disc or my Wii U disc into those respective consoles and playing it from now until the time that I'm 80 and on my deathbed. I can be on my deathbed playing Wind Waker HD with a Wii U gamepad in my hand, and that's amazing. Same with the GameCube copy that I own. That has value. You might not be able to when you're 80 in 50, 60, 70 years, however the hell old you are now. When you're 80 years old, you might not be able to. In fact, I'll just go ahead and say you probably won't be able to play the NSO digital version of the Wind Waker available right now on the Nintendo Switch 2 when you are 80 years old, okay? Now, if you had a GameCube or a Wii U, you probably could, but if you don't own those, you can't play those games. You'd have to rely on the digital version that I don't think is going to exist 50 years from now. So, yeah, I think I've said most of what I have to say, and I think I've explained a lot of my opinions and my philosophies here. So I can probably start to wrap this up, but I just need to double down on how nice it is to know that all these games I own, and you saw some clips and pictures in this video here, it matters to me that I worked for the money that I spent on those and that I have them. It's just, again, you don't have to feel the same way. So I want to end by reiterating, I'm not trying to convince you to agree with me. If you like your digital gaming and you don't care about the preservation of the games you like today in 50 years, then that's fine. I'm not telling anyone that you have to prefer physical over digital. A lot of people like digital gaming. It's a great convenience. I understand the value to people who like it. But some of us are the opposite. We prefer physical. And that is why everything I went over today is why I said what I said in that video that prompted this person to leave this comment. When any company releases an all-digital console, if the PlayStation 6 is all digital, I'm not buying a PlayStation 6. I do not want it. I don't care. And the good thing about that is I'll always have my PlayStation 5. I'll always have my PS 1, 2, and 3 that I also own. I don't have a PS4, but I have a PS 1, 2, 3, and 5. I'll always have those. I will never stop playing video games. That's not what I'm saying when I make that statement. I will stop playing and buying and supporting modern gaming once all digital consoles comes out. But as I've showed you in these, I'm not going to go over there. As I've showed you in my clips, I've got my GameCube, I've got my Jaguar, I've got my Wii U, I've got my Sega Genesis, I have my PlayStation 2. I will continue to play old games forever until my deathbed. I just will stop supporting modern gaming once it starts going all digital. So, I think I need to wrap this up. This has been very long at the end here. So, I hope this made sense. This is just how I feel about physical gaming and why I'll always be a physical gamer and why I will move on from all digital consoles and all digital companies down the road. The only thing that will make that hard is Metroid. I might give in on an all-digital Switch 3 if a new Metroid game comes out and I have to play it digital. That might be the one franchise that convinces me to go that way. But I don't even want to think about that yet. Hopefully Nintendo doesn't go that route. So anyway, this is what I think. Share your own thoughts and opinions below. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening, and I'll see you next time.